We are going to talk about the book of Qohelet. The Talmud really says that Bikshu Hachamim lignoz Sefer Qohelet. The rabbis were considering burying the book of Qohelet, taking it out of the codex and just putting it aside if whatever would have disappeared. And it's probable that we lost some books that we don't know that existed. Shana spoke on Friday. Israela spoke on Friday about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's a whole library that was discovered in the caves in Qumran, and there is a debate regarding that those texts, were they part of the Tanakh or not? Why are they out? But even that statement in the Gemara about Sefer Qohelet, which by the way they had the same idea about the book of Yehezkel and Shir HaShirim that they wanted to bury, because there were certain things that they would find hard to explain to the people, and they were afraid that it will take people off the derech, as we say. So I think that what the rabbi should have told you is that the message of that statement in the Gemara is not that the rabbis wanted to put it in Gnizah, but rather that the rabbis eventually included it in the Tanakh. That was the point. The point was not to say, unfortunately, I think the Orthodox community of today comes from a very narrow-minded place. What the rabbis of the past wanted to tell you, they said, even though we had some problems with the book, with the content, and a message that we thought might be difficult, we decided that it's okay to include it. And I'll say why it's important that they said that. You might have heard me saying in another occasion that we are lucky that the editors of the Tanakh, the Tanakh was canonized. There was like from this statement and others, we understand that there was sort of a conference of rabbis which decided what makes it into the Tanakh. And those books that didn't make it are called Sfarim Hitzonim, the Apocrypha, especially those which were written in later periods, right? Sometimes I think, because I love Tanakh, I think what would have happened if the Tanakh was canonized not by the rabbis who lived 200 years ago, but by the rabbis of today, by the Orthodox Union, let's say, right? Or the editors of our scroll. If they were the editors, it would save us a lot of time and money, because instead of having like 1,000 pages in your Tanakh, you would have about 30. Only that which was approved by the OU. Everything else they would find questionable. So the Chumash would be lighter, the Torah would be shorter, the children would have to learn less in school, and Judaism would be in general very dogmatic, and
Rabbi, the Torah would be a kitzur.
Kitzur Torah, right. But of course, even on that, you would have mountains of literature that would be built on that. But this is a testament to the greatness of the rabbis, even though they were debating ideas that are mentioned in Qohelet and in Shir HaShirim and in Yehezkel. They were able eventually to reconcile it. So I'll first say what is the problem that they had with Qohelet, and we'll get. There are many problems, but the one that really stuck out for them is a statement in the book of Qohelet where he says, "Mi yodea ruach ha'adam ha'olai lemala, or nefesh ha'adam ha'olai lemala, ve'nefesh ha'behema yoredet lemata." Who knows if the spirit of man goes upwards, goes to heaven, and the spirit or the soul of the animal goes down to earth. Umikre had lahema says everybody eventually has the same end. We all die. So that was a big problem, because the rabbis promote the idea of Tehiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead, the Olam Haba, the existence of a soul in a different level, in a different universe. So that was a difficult thing for them. But they kept it in, and because they kept it in, they allowed a very rich literature to grow around it. Not only Qohelet, also around Shir HaShirim, also around the books of Nevi'im, midrashic literature, later on Kabbalistic literature. Whenever there's an attempt to double down or to limit the creativity and the emotion that you could attach to the Torah and to our texts, you will have a counter reaction. So, for example, when Maimonides, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, wrote his Mishneh Torah and sort of distilled the halacha in a very clear way. That's the only thing you need to know from the Torah till now, right? And in a way, with all due respect, he sucked the fun out of Judaism, right? Judaism became very rigid and very monastic. It's like this is what you do. You don't deviate to the right or to the left. Even your emotions are calibrated with halacha. Then the counter reaction was the literature of Kabbalah, the mystical literature, and the poetry of the Golden Age in Spain before and after Maimonides. Now, an interesting analogy comes from Islam, and I wasn't planning to start discussion of Qohelet with Islam, but it's an important concept, because today we'll look at Islam as a very fanatic, close-minded religion, an even dangerous religion. And it's true. A lot of the fanatic terrorism in the world is inspired by Muslim clerics who don't represent the majority of Muslims, but unfortunately, always people are more vocal and more in the front, put themselves in the front lines, and this is what you hear. So I was introduced to a different concept many years ago. I wrote a piece called "Reopening the Bridge with Islam." It happened before when Obama was running for president, and American Muslims felt marginalized. It was after 9/11, but they weren't welcome during the election. So I wrote this piece about being a Jew of Islam, and it was interesting. Of course, mixed reactions, right? Some people loved it, and some people said that I know nothing about Islam. So, and it was interesting. Were interesting comments, and one of the emails that I received was from a professor of history and philosophy in the University of Minnesota. His name is Anwar Majid, and is from Morocco originally, and he referred me to his book called "A Call for Heresy." A Call for Heresy. And in the book, he describes how at the time of early Islam, not the very beginning, not the first 150 years, later on, when the scholars starting collecting the Sunnah, and the Hadith, the oral traditions, and starting editing them into the different versions of the Quran and the additional material around the Quran, there was a tradition among Muslim scholars called Zandaqa, which means heresy, where the scholars were encouraged to propose heretical opinions. They were actually asked to do that. They were challenged to do that, and it was not frowned upon. Not everywhere. I mean, of course, there were certain cultures and countries where this was forbidden, but in many circles, this was something that was encouraged. Why was it encouraged? Because when you try to ban any heretical thought, you could call it a thought police. You're only allowed to think about certain things. You're only to say certain things. And then your creativity is limited. You never question what you do. You become apathetic. You are locked into a certain way of life. And it affects not only your religion, but your environment, your society, your progress in everything you do. On the other hand, if you encourage that type of questioning, then you encourage also creativity, independence, you make a totalitarian regime impossible, because you are willing to ask questions And this is something that you see in Jewish culture, even though within certain circles there were doctrines, there were people who were more of a totalitarian approach, but Judaism in general is a religion that encourages asking questions. The Talmud is full of that. You say that, I will challenge you. You say something, ipcha mistabra, maybe it's the opposite, right? So this is something I think that the rabbis alluded to when they said that they wanted to bury Qohelet, but then they said, no, we want to keep it in. Why? Because it's important to have that kind of dissenting opinions. And within Qohelet itself, what we'll find is that it's very hard to define clearly what is the theology of the book. What is really the theology of Qohelet? If you read Qohelet, and if you studied it well, you find yourself sometimes wondering, wait a second. Qohelet says something in Perek Aleph, in chapter 1, and now he contradicts, or she contradicts herself in chapter 2. And I'm saying she because it's very probable that Qohelet was a woman, even though the book is attributed to Shlomo Melech Israel. There's a place where, there is an indication that Qohelet was a woman. And if this is so, we can say that all the Megillot are about women. Ruth, Shira Shirim, Esther, and even Echa, that is the book of Lamentations, is written all in the feminine. So interesting, section of the Tanakh, the Megillot that are more from the feminine point of view. So I think that what Qohelet tries to do is to show us that there's no clear answer to the question, what is my purpose in life? Rather, as we go through life, we go through different situations and we live in different circumstances, and our perspective keeps shifting. There are certain things that are steady in our lives, and that is something that reminds me of the method called logotherapy by Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite authors. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search of Meaning, and the Unheard Cry for Meaning. I just recently found out that if you like Viktor Frankl, if you read his books, you'll be glad to know that there's a rare recording of his on YouTube. If you search Viktor Frankl, you see there's a snippet of a lecture of his. He's a very powerful personality, and that's a book that I try to read every year before the high holidays to get ready for Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. So one of the things that Frankl speaks about in his method of logotherapy is that you don't ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Rather, you ask a child, what do you want to be? Not what do you want to be when you grow up. Right now, where you are in life, what do you want to be? And he says also, with his patients, he would ask, what is your purpose in life? Now, what is your purpose in life? So it's not the idea of I'm only living in the here and now, but rather from the here and now, I understand my future. And I have to be able to understand that sometimes my here and now will change and my purpose will change. Not to so it could be a greater cause within which I find my place. Anyway, enough philosophy. Let's go to the text. So I'm going here. Here's the text. Divrei Qohelet ben David Melech b'Yerushalayim. First of all, just the name Qohelet comes from the word kahal, together, and that's why we have this. The name Ecclesiastes comes from the word ecclesia. Menachem is with us as a linguist, but from what I know, like the word iglesia in Spanish, which means knessia, it's a gathering. So, just like we use the word eclectic is a gathering of different materials. So, Qohelet means to gather. And it's possible that the book was called Qohelet because it's a gathering of, like an anthology of sayings of wisdom. Divrei Qohelet ben David Melech b'Yerushalayim. We don't know of a Qohelet who was the king, so that's why the book is attributed to Shlomo HaMelech, and it's part of the wisdom literature. Havel Havalim Amar Qohelet. Havel havalim, hakol havel. Vanity of vanities, said Qohelet. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. It's really emphasizing the concept of vanity, and his questioning our purpose in life. מה יתרון לאדם בכל עמלו שיעמול תחת השמש? What profit do we have in all of our toil that we toil under the sun? דור הולך ודור בא, והארץ לעולם עומדת. One generation passes and another generation comes, and the earth stands forever. וזרח השמש ובא השמש, ואל מקומו שואב זורח הוא שם. The sun rises, the sun sets, and goes back to its original place. הולך אל דרום וסובב אל צפון. It goes to the south and comes to the north. סובב סובב הולך הרוח ועל סביבותיו שב הרוח. The wind goes around and comes about. כל הנחלים הולכים אל הים והים איננו מלא. The rivers go to the sea is never full. אל מקום שהנחלים הולכים, שם הם שבים ללכת. And to the place where the rivers go, that's where they come back. So far he speaks of nature, but in a different way than in Psalm 104, where the psalmist praises nature. Here he says, when I look at nature, what does he see? He sees an eternal cycle, right? The cycle, the sun, the planets, and even on Earth, he sees that what our kids learn about water, right? He says, where is the water going? The water goes to the sea evaporates, you have clouds, the clouds give us water again. So what is the purpose of our work on earth? He says, Dor holech v'dor ba. The word dor in Hebrew is interesting. We translate it as generation, but really it means a cycle. The word dor, the biradical root, remember we spoke about the word that has two letters. Shana mentioned it on Friday also. The two letters, dalet resh in Hebrew, means to turn around, to go in a circle. Even the famous word kadur, which means a ball, is actually taken from Yirmiyahu, where God tells to one of the wicked people, Pashhur ben Imer, he says, Hashem is going to roll you like a dur and kick you away. Ka-dur, like a dur. And dur is really tumbleweed, so kadur, that's where we get the word kadur. So when you say dor holech v'dor ba, Shlomo Qohelet, looks at the world and he says, what I see is dor holech v'dor ba. There's no progress. Those who are born are going to die, and then another generation is born, and what happens? And then it uses the same term dor for humans, and sovev, which also is to go around, for the wind. So what is our purpose in life? This is Qohelet's question. And he says, Kol hadevarim yege'im, lo yuchal ish ledaber. All things toil to weariness, man cannot utter it. Lo tisba'ain lirot v'lo timale ozen mishmoa. So the translation is a bit problematic. I think what he wants to say is, Kol hadevarim yege'im. If you try to cover everything in the world, you will tire. You can never speak of everything in the world. Lo yuchal ish ledaber. לא תשבע עין לראות ולא תמלא אוזן משמוע. מה שהיה הוא שיהיה, ומה שנעשה הוא שיעשה, ואין כל חדש תחת השמש. What has been is what will be, and what was done is what will be done, and there's nothing new under the sun. So I want to ask you, what you see a certain contradiction between the verse 8 and verse 9. In verse 8 he says, whatever you do, you'll never be able to cover everything on earth. There's always something new to see, always something new to hear, right? On the other hand, he says, whatever was, whatever will be, and nothing has changed. En kol hadash tahat hashamesh.
The first sentence is quantitative, the second is qualitative. The first sentence is saying the scope of everything is too large for you to be able to grasp, but qualitatively, within each category, could potentially 70 different dimensions that you can experience. So
Mhm.
there's an experience that each person has that's unique, and that could be a different flavor, like 31 flavors of ice cream.
Mhm.
But the breadth of the scope is so tremendous that you can't possibly taste each flavor in each category.
I hear. Okay. Interesting approach. What else? Any thoughts on that? It says on one hand, it says you can never cover everything under the sun. You can never uh, experience everything under the sun. On the other hand, he says whatever you do is the same. So, is it just throwing us from one end to another, just to perspective, or I'll pull up the psukim again. I hear what David is saying. It's about quantity or quality. There's so much to see, but in essence, that could be that everything is the same. Uh, so maybe what he says, along the lines of what David said, is that there's so much to see in the world. Like like the books that says 1,000 things you must uh, do before you die, and 1,000 places you must visit, 1,000 foods you must eat, etc., etc. Right? It says whatever you do, there will always be something new that you could try, something new that you could experience. But then he says, "Ma shehaya hu sheyeh." Your experiences add to one another. You visited this mountain, that river. You were in awe. You were inspired, but people did it before you, or you did something similar before that. So I think maybe he speaks here about the tension between your expectation and your letdown after you did that. You want to do something amazing, something great, and you do it, and then you feel, okay, so what have I done with that? If it's just to see what's around the world. יש דבר שיאמר ראה זה חדש הוא, כבר היה לעולמים אשר היה מלפנינו. Some people say, get excited, wow, look at this is something new, we never saw this before, but it already existed. And then he concludes this first paragraph, אין זיכרון לראשונים, וגם לאחרונים שיהיו, לא יהיה להם לזיכרון, לא יהיה להם זיכרון עם שיהיו לאחרונה. This is a bit depressing, right? You say, well, you don't remember. Those who were before us are forgotten, and those who will come after us will also be forgotten, right? And I think this is a pretty good question when we ask ourselves, what if you remove the idea of Olam Haba, just look at the world as it is. What is the purpose of people in the world? What is our purpose?
Why bother trying is what he's saying.
Why bother trying, right? We all speak about we want to make the world a better place, right? So, and then what? And then what? Okay, we'll make it a better place, which is something that I subscribe to, by the way. I'm not Chas v'Shalom rejecting it. Don't misunderstand me, right? But I remember my when I was in high school, one of my rabbis was describing that one of my teachers. He said, you see people working so hard. They work day and night. And then they say, why are you working so hard? I want to provide for my child. And he says, and you ask the child grows up and he works so hard, day and night, doesn't, and then why are you working for my child? And so on and so on. He says, I want to see that child at the end of time for whom the whole world is working. Everybody's working to provide for that child, right? So yeah, when we ask, we do want to create a better world, but what is our purpose in that? What will be the benefit of that? That people will live without suffering, and then what will their purpose be? Right? When the world reaches this sort of like what could call maybe a physical nirvana, when everything is perfect, what will be the purpose of the people living then? Just spiritual bliss, spiritual joy, like Olam Haba, tzaddikim yושבים ועטרותיהם בראשיהם ונהנים מזיו השכינה. The righteous people are sitting and with their halos on their heads, above their heads, and they enjoy
But Rabbi,
Virtual minyan for 24 hours a day.
Oh my God, I need a break. Yes.
I think what happens though is, somebody's looking for this end result in terms of accomplishment, which ultimately ends up in material accomplishment, and not understanding that the experience of living, I mean, even you find that in God's name, the experience of being is a thing unto itself of incredible value.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like self-serving. It adds to, it's just a dimension of life that adds to the life around you and gives it meaning.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I think this. Yes.
The question,
Yeah.
that specific question of the pasuk, right, or that introspection, reminds me of a speech of Michio Kaku, the physicist, and his book, also the future of humanity, where he talks about the different types of civilizations, right? And supposedly we are transitioning from type 0 to type 1, and I think humanity at that introspection and that question is a call for humanity to not for us as the Jewish people, but for humanity to work in a way that we can leave our mark in the universe. Not only here, not only we think individually, we think from the perspective of the religious community, and time pass, and it's a cycle. I mean, we're not getting anywhere in terms of as a human race making a mark. And I see that question from the author of the book as a call, and he say Qohelet was king of Israel, king of Jerusalem, and he proclaimed he has that title, and still yet he has to make that questions.
So thank you, Israela and Yoshua and Eduardo also with the text. You shared a beautiful thing. I think, Israela, what you said is beautiful, and I was pushing the question for us to get to this point, that we're so focused on at the end of days, or the end all. What is the ultimate goal, that we lose sight of the here and now. And this is something that I mentioned in general. When the Torah is called Torah Haim, the Torah is the Torah of life that teaches how to live our life now. Logotherapy, Frankel also speaks about the here and now, appreciating where we are. Eduardo shared this quote from Oscar Wilde: "To live is the rarest of things. Most people just exist." And this is so true. You see people that are swept in the need to live, to survive, to provide. And we're not talking about people who live in poverty. People who were born into great wealth, but for them to maintain the legacy of the family is to make sure that this great wealth keeps, bringing more prosperity. But at the same time, they lose sight of their family, of their loved ones, of themselves. Now, Yoshua, what you shared also, I'm in the middle actually of reading this book. I don't know if I'm in the middle. I'm in the first third of reading it, the future of humanity, even though I'm reading it in Hebrew. And I think I agree. This is what Qohelet really wants us to do, to pay attention to what is happening around us. I think that was maybe alongside the reluctance of the rabbis to include Qohelet in the Tanakh. That's why it was important for them to include it, because people already at the time of the Tanakh was canonized started locking on the prospect of the future, like what we discussed in Yov, right? People are thinking, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and that in my life, so in the future life, I will have a better life in the world to come. But they lose sight of what is happening around them.
It became a point system. It became how many points can I score,
Right.
from later on. It's all about the points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have an
I think
analogy.
go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Shayna.
I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
So I just, not an analogy. I think there's something that a lot of us see, and sometimes we cannot fathom, we cannot understand. You ever see a little kid building a tower from wooden blocks? Okay, what do they do after they finish building the tower?
They break it.
They break it and they do it again, and they get a kick out of it. They're so happy. It's unbelievable. They build the tower, and people, what we are as parents, will look at it and we say, what do you say? Some parents, the kid is violent. It's the natural desire for destruction. Whatever it is. No, it's not. The kid, unlike us, we were spoiled. Being grown-ups, right? For us, the goal is the final product, the tower, right? For the kid, it's the process. He enjoyed so much building the tower, he wants to do it again. So this is something that maybe we could learn from. Yes, Shayna, you want this?
Yeah, well, maybe it's a little bit of a philosophical treatise here, because the question that this kind of begs is, like I said, should we bother doing anything? So maybe it's an issue of like a questioning of divine will. I mean, do we have any power? Nothing's going to change if the divine will is like sitting there and everything is predestined, then nothing that we do is going to change things. But if we look from a modern perspective, we've done a lot that's affected the earth. He said in one of those verses up there that nothing on the earth changes. Well, it has changes. We've seen glaciers melt. We've seen all sorts of things happen now. So humankind has affected evolution and the world. So maybe this is questioning. Maybe that's why they didn't want to put it in, because maybe it's questioning the utter sovereignty of the divine in a sense.
Right. So, but on the other hand, you're right. We are affecting Earth, but a thought that occurred to me one time. I was in Big Sur in California, in Esalen. It's a retreat. People meditate, and it was a beautiful place. And I got out at night. The cliffs of Big Sur, really have a very steep go into the ocean. So I look far, and I was, for some reason, I was thinking about what you're saying now along these lines, what we've done to the earth, and I was thinking, what happens if we disappear? What happens if mankind runs itself out? It will take a while, maybe 10,000 years, but the earth will come back to what it was before mankind. It will recover. The earth will be what it is. En hadash tahat hashamesh. So anyway, you see, the beauty of Qohelet is the very first verses of Qohelet, where when you read the beginning of Tehillim, happy is the man who did not go in the path of the. Okay, beautiful. I know what you want to say, right? You read the first verse of Echa. We lament the destruction of. Okay, I know what you're saying, right? Maybe the only other book that confuses us so greatly from the very beginning is Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elohim. What happened there? We don't know. We think that we know, right? And interestingly enough, he also speaks about creation from a different perspective. So he gets us to think of what are we really doing here. So he says, I was in a position. Qohelet says, I was in a position to really investigate that. Most people are so marred in their daily work that they can't do that. But I Qohelet, was a king of Am Yisrael in Yerushalayim, ונתתי את ליבי לדרוש ולתור בחוכמה על כל אשר נעשה תחת השמיים. He says, I had time to seek and to search in wisdom of all the things that happen under the heavens. והוא עניין רע נתן אלוהים לבני האדם לענות בו. He says, I came to the conclusion that whatever happens under the heaven is some evil plan that God has given. Okay, they they translate like sore task, like a difficult thing. But he says this is bad. God got us. In Hebrew, there's a term called it avodah yezuma. The avodah yezuma is when a kid bothers you, or a subordinate bothers you. It says, okay, go take all the files out of cabinet A and organize them from A to Z, and then put them in cabinet B. And when you're done, take them out again and organize them by numerical order and put them back in cabinet A. Right? What's the point of that? That was how they were organized from the beginning. This is what Qohelet says. Inyan ra natana Elohim libnei adam la'anot bo. It's just like Hashem is keeping us busy working for to no end. And I saw the chat. Two interesting comments that I want to look at. One from Susie, one from Adam. So let me go there. Okay. I'm missing Susie's.
I have a.
All right. So Susie, Mary, along the same line. Once again, someone said that we're not supposed to solve the mystery of life, but to live it. And Mary, it's about the journey, not so much about the destination. And I'll add to this a Hasidic saying. And Adam added also, of the later generation that are to come after us will have no recollection of the generation that will be after them. The Midrash Haggadah expounds that is referring to the obliteration of Amalek's remembrance will ultimately be obliterated. So we will even forget that someone existed that we had to forget to make disappear. So there's a Hasidic statement, verse that I don't know who is the author. Maybe it's the Rabbi of Kotsk. It fits the Rabbi of Kotsk. He was a seeker of the truth, and he says in Hebrew is Ha'adam hu ha'she'ela ve'Elohim ha'tshuva ve'hametach ben ha'she'ela la'tshuva hu ha'chaim ve'im timatzeh ha'tshuva lo yeh ta'am la'she'ela. It says man is the question and God is the answer, and the tension between the question and the answer is life. Is the energy for life. Thank you, Edna. My wife corrected me. Is the energy for life. And when the answer will be found, then the question will exist no more. So that comes from a different place. It's not just living life as it is, but living life with being imbued in spirituality, being connected to the divine, not just a mundane chore, but something that takes us a little above that. But in that saying, the Rabbi of Kotsk is saying that we don't need to know everything, but we need to enjoy what we're doing at that moment. It's that tension, this energy that is between us and seeking the truth of the divine. Anyway, someone was commenting something before, and I kept going. Okay, if you need to bring it up, bring it up. We're going back to the text. So Qohelet goes on to say, ראיתי את כל המעשים שנעשו תחת השמש, והנה הכל הבל ורעות רוח. It's all vanity, everything that happens. מעוות לא יוכל לתקון, וחסרון לא יוכל להימנות. When something is distorted, you cannot fix it. Something which is missing, you cannot bring it back. דיברתי אני, which we could challenge, right? We could challenge. You don't have always to fix that which was crooked. You could find another way. But this is what Qohelet says from his perspective. דיברתי אני עם ליבי לאמור, אני הנה הגדלתי והוספתי חוכמה על כל אשר היה לפניי על ירושלים. I was greater in wisdom and from anyone who ruled before me over Jerusalem. And my heart saw a lot of wisdom and knowledge. This, by the way, tells us that maybe Qohelet is not Shlomo, but rather a much, much later descendant of David. Maybe from the Davidic dynasty, and like I said, maybe a woman, because here in verse 16 he says, I have gotten great wisdom, more also than all that were before me over Jerusalem. If this is Shlomo, who was before him a king over Jerusalem?
David and Shaul.
Only David, no. Shaul didn't have Jerusalem. At the time of Shaul, right, David was the one who conquered Jerusalem from the Yevusi. So What is like? Oh, I more than anyone before me. Who was it? Your father? Okay, fine, fine. But if he's someone who lives at the end of the dynasty, and he says, "I'm more of all the kings of Yerushalayim," then there are about 30 kings who were there, or 17 kings for that period, and it also makes sense that it comes from a much later period than Shlomo, because the language there are certain language coins in Qohelet that are more that come from a later period in the Hebrew language, such as, for example, the use of the she instead of asher. In the Tanakh, you always find asher, but the she, which is shorter, is belongs to a later period, and we find it also in Shir Hashirim, Hagidali she'ahava nafshi. In the Tanakh, it's always asher in the earlier books of the Torah, of the Tanakh. So he says, "Vayetana libi lada'at chokhmah vada'at holelut v'sichlut, yadati shegam zehu ra'ayon ruach." So I try to understand wisdom and knowledge, madness and folly, and I understood that this is also ra'ayon ruach, just striving after wind, or something that comes from my spirit but has no hold in reality. Ki berov chokhmah rov ka'as, ve'yosif da'at yosif machov. The more you know, says Qohelet, the more you suffer. Or, we call it the bliss of ignorance. It's better not to know. Why do we seek wisdom? The more we know, the more we understand, the more we are pain. Maybe he looks at the child and he says, a child does not see the full picture, and his problems, her problems are minute. They cry over a lost pacifier. Not in this time, they didn't have pacifiers, but okay, you find it. Your lost toy, you find it. The more you know, the more you feel pain. That's
Isn't that only true if you're unable to change it? So if you have no power to change something, then that's true. Then the more you know, the more you have pain. But if you know more and you're able to affect change within what is painful, then that's not necessarily true.
It's true. It's true. So you're right. I think that's a very good insight. That when Shlomo says berov chokhmah yosif, berov chokhmah rov ka'as v'yosif da'at yosif machov, that wisdom only causes you to be upset, and knowledge causes you pain, is when you just have the knowledge but you take no action. But and some people are going to be paralyzed by the knowledge of suffering around them, or the injustice. They will say, "There's nothing that I could do," and they become depressed and exasperated, and they're not going to do anything. But if you decide to take charge, and we'll see that Qohelet does speak about that. Qohelet does recognize that we need to take charge and take action. But this is, like I said, remember, Qohelet, in my opinion at least, I'm not, I'm reading it with everyone. Qohelet does not offer definite ideas and answers, but rather just challenges us to think: is this true? Is this true? Is this the way you see the world? What is it that you want to do? What is the right way?
Shlom Tzion?
What?
Could she have written it? Shlom Tzion? Could she have written it? Has
Be a
anybody
little-
suggested
Well,
that?
because of the word Shlomo, because of the word Shalom.
Well, I was thinking because the word, and just because she's the only woman queen that was righteous that I know of.
It's a bit late, even though some people say that Qohelet, some scholars say that I think Qohelet was written around the 3rd century BCE. Shlom Tzion lived in the 2nd century. And I'll tell you what pasuk is the one that I'm referring to in terms of Qohelet being a woman. One second, I think it's in chapter A, but I'll just check. 1 second. 5, 6. So, Let me see where it is. 7, 8. No, it's towards here. In chapter 8, verse 27, says, "Re'eh ze matzati amra Qohelet, achat le'achat limtzo cheshbon." Look what have I found, Qohelet has said, but in the feminine, amra Qohelet. So, we could say maybe it's a Masoretic correction. Maybe it was Amar Qohelet. Maybe it's Amarah. He said it. But still, it's strange, And the stranger thing is that this is between two psukim that are very judgmental towards women. It says, "Motzeh ani mar mimavet et ha'isha, asher im metzodim v'haramim." The woman is bitter, more bitter than death. And more I searched and I couldn't find. Adam echad me'elef matzati. I found one man among 1,000, but a woman among all these I didn't find. But in between those two, it says Re'eh matzati. Look what I found. Qohelet, she said, right? So I think just saying it's strange. I leave it like that because we cannot figure out who the author was. But I will just say that I think, and I will stop sharing 1 second. I just think that there is a lot in our literature that was written by women that we don't know of, because who would listen? Who would listen to them? They were in the early books of the Tanakh. Yes, women were heard, but in later periods, like the time of Qohelet, women were slowly pushed aside. And I believe that in the Talmud we have, besides things that we know were said in the name of women, there was more midrashim for sure. A lot of midrashic literature was written by women. We just don't know it. So for me it's a fair assumption, just based on this word, that this is maybe the one hint that the author is giving us, that Qohelet is written from a different perspective. Also, I don't want to use cliches, and I say I don't think a man would be capable of such deep musings, going back and forth, but whatever. I'm kidding. So let's go back to the text. Amarti ani belibi. So Qohelet says, okay, I tried wisdom. Wisdom does not work. The more you know, and maybe answering to David, it says there's a limit to the knowledge that you can have and still fix the world. You get to the point where there's you realize there's so many things that need to be done that you just sit back and say, there's nothing I can do. So he says, "Amarti ani belibi, lechana anascha besimcha u're'eh betov, v'hineh gam hu havel." I said maybe I should just rejoice, have fun, party. That is also vanity. Why? Lischok amarti meholal u'lesimcha ma zo osa. Of laughter, I felt that is madness, and joy. What is the point of joy? Tarti belibi limshoch bayayin et besari. I said, okay, maybe I should pamper my flesh with wine. Let me just drink to oblivion. Velibi noeg bechokma velehoz besichlut. Says maybe I'll follow wisdom and stupidity to find what is the right thing to do. Igdalti ma'asai, and then he describes how he amasses possessions, houses, vineyards, orchards, pools to water forests. He purchased servants, maidservants, flocks. V'gadalti ve'osafti. I was greater than anyone who lived before me in Yerushalayim. Whatever my eyes wanted, I gave them. Lo manati et libi mikol simcha. I said, okay, I will rejoice in everything that the world can offer me. Ki libi samech mikol amali. That makes my heart joyful from all my toil. Ufaniti ani lirot bechol ma'asai. Ufaniti ani bechol ma'asai. And then when I look around, it's all hevel again, hevel. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to encourage everybody to read the second chapter, and on Tuesday we'll sort of sum it up and continue a little bit, kept to the next paragraph. But
may I make a comment, Rabbi?
Yes, of course, Israel.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to have noted this, but it just seems so much similar to the discussions of the Buddha and how he how he contemplated his life as a prince and then his life everywhere else, and concluding that everything was suffering. And then, of course, he found somewhere to go with that. I don't know, I have to read the rest of this and contemplate it to see if there's somewhere to go with this. But anyway, that was just my...
Qohelet, it's interesting. And I like I said, it's not clear what Qohelet tells you. But I think Jill mentioned it last Wednesday on when she read her poetry. There's a verse towards the end, I think Perek had also, it says, "Re'eh Haim Misha she'ra'avta." Find life with one whom you loved. Could be the wife that you love, could be the good friends, could be family. And that's what you mentioned before, that the idea of living life and enjoying it, enjoying what the experience of life. But at this point, he tries to understand what is the experience of life. Is it, having fun, eating good food, drinking good wine, and I think he realized that at a certain point, you have to do what truly makes you happy, right? And he will explain in a certain point of the book, what is it that makes you happy? And it is a bit hidden, not directly written. But what makes us happy more than anything? Now psychologists have proven that what makes humans happy in a lasting way, in a way which is positive and constructive, is chesed, is helping other people. This is the most satisfying notion that we can have, or we can help when we help others. And the way Qohelet phrases it is, two are better than one. Because when one falls, there's no one there to pull him up. But when there are two, and one falls, his friend will pull him up. I'll talk about it on Tuesday, but I leave you now with that as a riddle. What is the great wisdom of that statement? Right? Any child could have said that. We said that Qohelet speaks about the wisdom and all that. And if it's attributed to Shlomo is called the Chacham Mikol Adam, the wisest of all men. And now he comes to tell me a great word of wisdom. Two are better than one, because if one falls and he's alone, nobody will pull him up. Okay, yeah, I think we knew that before you said it. So there's something much deeper that, and I'll keep it for Tuesday, Be'ezrat Hashem.